Hi, welcome to Supper with Stella. Today we're going to be making 3 little snacks or finger foods that are perfect for really any kind of party you want to have. I am preparing it for just a few nibbles for us to have on New Year's Eve. And I'm just feeding 2 people. So we will have more than enough food for the 2 of us, and we'll definitely even have leftovers. Got a big New Year's Day dinner planned, and we'll have some company coming over for that. New Year's Eve is just 2 of us. So small scale on the snacks. However, as with almost all of my party recipes, you can easily double, triple, quadruple, easy recipes to scale up if you need to. So the first thing, 3 things on the menu. We're gonna do Monte Cristo sliders. So something that's kind of hearty. Of course, we'll be a little celebrating on New Year's Eve. So you want something a little bit substantial to go in people's stomachs. So Monte Cristo sliders. We're gonna do some Manchego-Stuffed Dates and then a crab dip. We're actually gonna hollow out some small little like cocktail tomatoes and just go ahead and put the dip into those. So I will get started with the sliders. And so for these, I'm using the sweet dinner rolls, the King's Hawaiian dinner rolls. And I noticed this year, I may have seen it before, but they come in 12 pack, which is what I bought, 12 little dinner rolls, but they also come in like 24 packs. So I almost bought that by accident. I was like, this is so much larger than I remember this being. And then realized it was the 24 pack. So again, this recipe, very, very easy to double. So I'm just gonna go in with my bread knife and just slice down the middle. Okay. Take the top off. And so what I've got here is 1 stick of butter that I've melted, and I'm just gonna squirt in a little Worcestershire sauce. I don't want a ton of Worcestershire. You don't generally get Worcestershire in Monte Cristos, but whenever I do little sandwiches like this, and you could use, it wouldn't be a Monte Cristo, but you could use whatever kind of filling. I've made ham and Swiss, I've made like a hot brown in this kind of application. Those aren't really mixing. But I always do like a butter glaze, and I generally put Worcestershire in it, so I figured for that. We always like it. Nothing wrong with Worcestershire. It is such a good flavor additive. All right. So I am just gonna pour about half of this butter into the bottom of my dish. And what I'm using, generally when I make a bunch of these, I use just an inexpensive disposable aluminum dish. I actually have a little casserole dish that fits these buns well for these dinner rolls, so I'm gonna use it this year since I'm just doing the 1 batch. But these are a favorite. Everybody likes any little sandwiches that are done in this method, honestly, not necessarily just the Monte Cristo. I'm just gonna spread this butter so it's, and this is actually a couple of days before we'll be eating this, so these are great recipes to make in advance. So I'm just gonna set that down in the butter, and then I have got some turkey and Havarti. Now, when I have eaten Monte Cristos, which generally aren't a little slider, it's usually a really big, very filling sandwich. They've had ham and turkey on them. I just wanted to do turkey, and I think Swiss is generally the cheese that gets used. But I like how Havarti melts really well, so I'm gonna use Havarti. And so I just wanna do a layer of cheese on the bottom. I think I can overlap them a little bit. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm so sorry. I forgot my condiments first. You gotta put mayonnaise on a sandwich. So I'm gonna do, you can use any mustard. I like Dijon, so I'll do Dijon. And then mayonnaise. And you can pre-mix them if you want. I'm just gonna kind of slide it all, mix it all together on the bread. Now, back to the cheese, which, as I said, is Havarti. Like I said, I think Swiss is a little more traditional, but you, of course, are welcome to use whatever cheese that you want to use on these. I think something like a cheddar would probably change the flavor profile a good bit, but I bet you could do like a Monterey Jack. Something a little milder. And so, as I said, I am just doing turkey. You certainly can do turkey and ham, though. And if I were making several of these, I would probably use both, but I didn't need more than one pack of meat. I don't even need an entire pack of lunch meat. And this is just inexpensive lunch meat. You certainly can get the deli sliced lunch meat as well, but I decided just to go inexpensive, always spending a lot of money at the holidays, so take my shortcuts where I can find them. And so a Monte Cristo sandwich, I've had them two ways. I have had the kind of deep fried version where they are put in a batter and then deep fried and, you know, in a fryer like French fries. And then I've had the version that is just dipped in like an egg wash like French bread and then cooked on a griddle. And I thought about doing that sort of method with this to try and kind of emulate that fried taste, whether it's, I knew I wouldn't be deep frying it, but I did consider doing, like an egg in the bottom with the butter and then more egg on top and then baking it that way. But in the end, I decided not to. Decided this would just be simpler. Do butter on the bottom, which I don't generally, when I make a sandwich like this, I don't usually do butter on the bottom. But the butter on the bottom, and we'll do butter on the top, and we're gonna press it so it squishes down, and hopefully that will create somewhat of that same effect. So I am one piece of cheese shy. I am just gonna cut this one in half. We won't shingle this top part. There we go. So you do want cheese on both sides because that is gonna help glue your bread on. And so one thing that makes it a Monte Cristo is there's raspberry jelly. Sometimes the jelly's in the sandwich, sometimes it is just served on the side. I'm gonna do it in the sandwich and I'll probably serve some on the side as well. So just give it a stir to kind of loosen it up. And this, I'm using raspberry jelly, which is, raspberry's traditional, but if you'd prefer strawberry or blackberry or something, I'm sure that would be fine. You don't want a super thick layer. You don't want it to taste super strongly of jelly. You just want this kind of nice little sweetness in the background. Do a little more. Okay, so now I am just going to take my jelly side, flip it over. Had a little pop through on the top where there was a hole kind of between the rolls. That's okay. So now I'm gonna press this down. I'm gonna take the rest of our melted butter and Worcestershire mixture, and I'm just as evenly as possible going to pour this over the top. And a lot's gonna run down the sides, and that's okay. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna cover this with a little parchment paper. And that's just gonna help with keeping this from not sticking when it cooks. And then some foil. It's a lot easier to wrap up one of those disposable pans. And then I have a sheet pan. Actually, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna turn this over because it'll perfectly fit. And I'm just gonna weigh this down with a cast iron skillet. Now, you could put this in the oven right now if you wanted to eat these soon. They're gonna cook for 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes at 350. You're really just getting the cheese to melt and getting that butter to kind of crisp up the bread. And that is gonna be as close an approximation as I am wanting to get to the exterior of a more classic Monte Cristo. And then traditionally, these are served sprinkled with powdered sugar. I'm not serving these just yet. Like I said, it's gonna be a couple of days before we eat these. So I'm just gonna pop this in my refrigerator just like this. And I will just bake these off, like I said, 20, 30 minutes before we wanna eat. So I'm gonna get these in the refrigerator and then we will come back and probably start on the crab dip. So next, we are gonna get started on the crab dip. So when I first started cooking, this is one of the early recipes that I learned to make and then made a few changes and made it my own. And it is just a really good, recipe. I like it a lot. And I usually serve this, it's actually the first time I've served it this way. I usually serve it with endive and I just trim the core, like the little stem end off the endive and separate all the leaves out. And so serve them on a platter, and then this is served as a dip in the center of the platter, and you just scoop it with the endive leaves. But I saw a picture in a magazine for tomatoes, like a crab dip served in tomatoes. And I was like, well, that's a good idea. I'm gonna give that a try sometime. So I have just diced up one shallot. You could use a red onion if you would like. I would just have it. And I'm gonna do just a few tablespoons of lemon juice. Anytime I'm serving seafood in this kind of like a tuna salad sandwich or a crab dip or even like a tuna dip or something, I think that, let me get those seeds out. Just a little fresh lemon juice really goes a long way in kind of brightening that taste up. Still got seeds in it, so I'm gonna pick these out real quick. All right, get in a little salt, a little pepper, and then some mayonnaise. I don't want a ton of mayonnaise with this. You want the crab to really stand out, but you also want it to be held together with something. And then really you can do any kind of herb you want. I really enjoy tarragon in this. And I had tarragon in my garden. And then when I went out to get tarragon this morning, the frost has just gotten it. It looks terrible. So I won't be using tarragon today. Parsley, I usually use like tarragon and parsley. If it's summertime, I will use basil. But considering that I am making this for the new year, there's no basil. I mean, I could buy basil, but no need. And I'm gonna be using lump crab. Now, my recipe calls for lump crab. And that's definitely the best, it's the best choice. I mean, lump crab is the best kind of crab there is. It's the crab that comes from the body of the crab as opposed to its claws or legs. It's also the most expensive. So if you're just doing a small little batch like this and you just need one jar, I'm always gonna splurge on the lump crab. But if I am feeding a crowd and I were, you know, doubling, tripling, quadrupling, whatever this recipe, I would use crab claw meat. It's still gonna taste great and it won't ruin your budget. But since I'm just doing the small version, I will use the lump crab. All right, crab is in. And just give it a mix. And if you think you need more mayonnaise or if you want a little dash of mustard in it, all of that would be fine. More lemon juice, if you wanted a different herb. Taste it before you put it in your tomatoes. Okay, now for the tomatoes. So what and again, this is for New Year's, so I purchased these. These are not from my garden, and they were labeled as cocktail tomatoes. So they're about yay big, maybe a little bigger than a golf ball size. So what I'm gonna do is kind of cut them, maybe cut the top like 2/3 off. Yeah. And then I'm gonna use a melon baller. If you have a tomato core, you can use that. I don't have one, so I just have a melon baller. To scoop out the insides carefully, because you don't want to break the wall. And then, something smaller, I am going to stuff this tomato with a spoonful of crab, okay? And so I will do this with all these tomatoes and serve them on a platter. I am not gonna do that right now though. Because I'm doing this a couple of days in advance, I am just gonna put this in an airtight container, store it in the refrigerator, and I will do all of this 30 minutes to an hour. Honestly, when I put my Monte Cristos in to cook, is probably when I'll do all of this. These tomatoes, honestly, they're not gonna have a ton of flavor. They're store-bought, and I just scooped out all the flavorful bits. So usually I would never refrigerate a fresh tomato. In this circumstance, it's not so much the refrigerator that I'm concerned with, as it just is the crab dip kind of breaking down with the acids of the tomato. And I just don't think that this is gonna hold up for a couple of days. But I wanted you to see how I am going to serve them. So I will get that done again. In a couple days, once the Monte Cristos go in the oven, I'll kind of finish all this up here, which it's not gonna really take me that long to do. And then we will get this really pretty, elegant, and very tasty snack to have for the new year, or at the end of the old year, rather. So I'm gonna get this in an airtight container. I'm gonna get all cleaned up, and then we will do our Manchego-Stuffed Dates. All right, so finally, we are to the Manchego-Stuffed Dates. So I have got a package of medjool dates, some Manchego cheese, and I actually have this little, it's called the Spanish tapas trio, and it's pre-sliced. It's Manchego, which I'll start with, but then there's also Cabra, I'm not quite certain how it's said, and Iberico cheese. And those are both, they're similar to Manchego. Manchego is a sheep's milk cheese. The Cabra is goat's milk, and the Iberico is sheep, goat, and cow milk. But they all have a fairly similar profile. So I will also use those. And even though they're not exactly the same, they're still gonna taste delicious. And then some fennel and some hot honey. So I'll do one of these. So with the date, these are not pitted. I think that they are just little fresher tasting if you buy the medjool dates that are not pitted. And you do want to get, I'm not super familiar with all the types of dates that are out there, but medjools are the ones that Sometimes you can find them year round, but you generally can find them at the holidays. They're not the kind that, or I've never seen them in the baking aisle. For me, they're usually in the produce section. Or if there's like a little specialty kind of changing seasonal section in your store, they might be there. But I usually see them in produce at the holidays. And they're huge, right? I mean, this is it's a little bigger than my thumb is the size. And I've seen them larger than this too. So you just want to, there's like a little stem end that you want to pull out, and then just give it a slice, kind of open it up some, and just got the pit in it, you just pull the pit out, okay? So I'm just gonna get, not all of these, like I said, I'm only feeding 2 of us, so I definitely don't need an entire pack of dates, but I'm gonna get 10 or so of these sliced open, and I think that'll be plenty for us. So I will get that done, get the little stems removed. Some of them don't have a stem, but all of them are gonna have their pit. You definitely gotta get that pit out or there's nowhere to stuff it. So I've got 10 dates. I really think that is all that I'm gonna need. And then I have some fennel and my little inexpensive little mandolin. So I wanna get some very, very thin pieces of fennel. I don't want them to be very thick. Fennel is a very powerful taste. It can be very overwhelming. So thin pieces. So here's where my stem was, and here's where the stem was, and these are where the leafy fronds came out of the top. So I am just gonna go in, because I want kind of a long piece on the side. And so what it's gonna give me, as I start to go, cut deeper into it, it looks like this. Some of them look like this. I'm gonna slice this in half. But it's very thin. You can see, I mean, it's super thin. I don't know the measurement on it, but I have 2 options as far as thickness on that slicer goes, and it's the smaller option. And if you like fennel more than me, then maybe you want the bigger option. But I'm just gonna stand this up into each one. And you can use celery. I have done celery in the past, and it is really, really good. But I do like changing it up kind of between the celery and the fennel. If you were doing a pile of these, like if you were feeding, 30 people, you could do some celery and some fennel. Now for the Manchego. So because it's pre-cut, it's always in a wedge. So I am just gonna slice my wedge right here in the center, because again, you get 2 bites out of this. You don't want any one flavor to be more powerful than another. So I'm just taking the tail end here and just pulling those little pre-sliced bits apart. And then with the top of the wedge, I'm just gonna slice them up and down. And that's gonna create relatively uniform pieces of Manchego. And I'm not even gonna have to get into the other cheeses. Looks like I have some left over for me to snack on, which is perfect. All right, so this is as much as I'm going to do today. So I've got my date, I've got fennel, and I've got a little Manchego in it. So I'm gonna put these in an airtight container. I'm gonna refrigerate them for the next couple of days. And the dates, I mean, in that cold air, they are gonna soften up a little bit. Not a ton. They will be kind of sticky to the touch, so you always want to make sure that you've got, as with any finger food, I mean, this isn't crazy, but you do want to make sure that you have got, you know, some little napkins for folks to use. And then before serving these, I'm gonna put them on a platter, and then I will drizzle them. I've got this Mike's Hot Honey, which is just like honey with a little infused with chilies. I've just got this little thing of it, and I'd like to kind of use it up. So I'll drizzle them with that and then sprinkle them with a little bit of paprika. And they will be pretty and festive and will get eaten up fairly quickly because we have made these so many times and we definitely love them. So that is it. That is it for today. That is 3 different finger foods for my New Year's Eve. Great year-round though. Manchego-Stuffed Dates, crab dip in tomatoes, and then some Monte Cristo sliders. So try them out. Let me know what you think. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye.